Good morning, y'all. I want to open this video with a number, not a forecast number, not a model output, not a probability percentage, just a plain number that I think puts everything I'm about to tell you in the clearest possible context. That number is 13 months. 13 months is approximately how long it has been since the United States witnessed a severe weather setup with the combination of atmospheric ingredients that I'm looking at in the data this morning. 13 months since the synoptic pattern, the moisture depth, the wind shear profile, and the instability values assemble themselves into the kind of configuration that produces not just a severe weather day, but a severe weather event that gets written into the record books. The last time we saw something that looked genuinely like this was March 2025. And y'all, if you remember what March 2025 looked like, if you remember the names of the towns, the sound of those tornado sirens, the images from Arkansas and Mississippi and Missouri that were circulating for days afterward, then you already understand exactly why I'm sitting here at 5 in the morning making this video before I have done anything else today. Because what is assembling right now deserves the same level of attention, the same level of urgency, and the same level of preparation that any of the biggest events of the last several years would have demanded. And I want to make sure you have all of it before this system arrives. Let me take a moment to talk about March 2025, because I genuinely believe that event is the most useful reference point for understanding what is setting up now, and because I think a lot of people have moved on from it in ways that may cause them to underestimate what a comparable setup means when it arrives. From March 13th through the 16th of 2025, a devastating 4-day tornado outbreak, the largest ever recorded in the month of March, carved through the south, central, and eastern United States. 118 confirmed tornadoes, 43 deaths across 8 states. $11 billion in property damage, making it the costliest tornado outbreak in United States history unadjusted for inflation. 2 EF4 tornadoes in Arkansas alone. A long track of violent tornado that stayed on the ground for an hour and 22 minutes in Mississippi, eventually reaching EF4 intensity and flattening well-built structures. The SPC issued a Day 2 high risk for that event, only the third time in the modern era that the agency had ever issued a high-risk outlook the day before the event rather than on the day itself. And the atmospheric ingredients that drove all of that destruction, the ingredients that created the conditions for 118 tornadoes in 4 days, for EF4 storms tracking for miles and miles across multiple states, were a powerful upper-level trough, extreme low-level moisture, exceptional wind shear, and a surface low that deepened to near or below 975 millibars over the Central Plains. A surface low that intense, in that location, in that moisture environment, in that shear profile, is what the atmosphere does when it is about to do something that people will remember for a long time. And when I look at what is setting up in the medium range right now, and I start comparing the numbers side by side, the trough depth, the dew point values, the CAPE projections, the helicity forecast, the surface low track, I keep coming back to the same conclusion. We have not seen this in over a year. Now, I want to be very precise about what I mean when I make that comparison, because precision is what separates a responsible, severe weather forecast from sensationalism. And I take that distinction seriously. I'm not telling you that what is coming is going to be a carbon copy of March 2025. Weather does not repeat itself in exact copies. Every event has its own track, its own timing, its own regional concentration of energy, and its own outcome. What I am telling you is that the fundamental atmospheric ingredients, the thermodynamic structure, the dynamic forcing, the moisture values, the shear environment, are being assembled right now in a way that has not appeared in the long-range model output since the spring of 2025. That is not me editorializing. That is a direct read of what the GFS and the European model are showing over multiple consecutive model runs, with a kind of consistency and run-to-run agreement that experienced forecasters treat as a signal of genuine large-scale confidence. When the models agree on the shape of a setup like this, from 48 to 72 hours out, you listen. You don't explain it away. You take it at full value and you act accordingly. So let me walk you through the actual atmospheric setup, because I think understanding the mechanics of what is happening right now is what allows the rest of this video to make sense, rather than just feeling like a string of alarming statements. The primary driver of this entire event is a deeply amplified upper-level trough that has been digging southward across the western United States over the past several days. I have talked about upper-level troughs on this channel before, but I want to explain this particular one in some detail because it is not an ordinary trough. It is a cold core, closed, upper-level low, meaning it has completely cut off from the main jet stream flow and is rotating around its own center, pulling frigid air from the upper levels of the troposphere deep into its core. Upper level temperatures inside the system are running in the negative 45 to negative 50 degrees Celsius range at the 500 millibar pressure level. And those are the kinds of upper level temperatures you see inside the most powerful spring storm systems of the year. What those extreme cold upper-level temperatures do to the atmosphere beneath them is critical to understanding this setup. They steepen the mid-level lapse rates, the rate at which temperature drops as you move upward through the atmosphere, to values in the 7 to 8 degrees Celsius per kilometer range. Steep lapse rates make the atmosphere explosively unstable. They make parcels of air near the surface, once they begin to rise, accelerate upward with tremendous force, producing violent updrafts inside thunderstorms that can sustain the largest hailstones and the most intense tornado circulations. The atmosphere underneath this trough is not just unstable, it is being primed for explosive, violent convection. Now, combine that upper-level structure with the moisture environment, and what you get begins to look genuinely alarming to anyone who has studied severe weather setups for any length of time. The low-level jet ahead of this system, the river of air moving northward at roughly 3,000 to 5,000 feet above the ground from the Gulf of Mexico, is forecast to strengthen to between 50 and 60 knots as the surface low deepens and the pressure gradient tightens. A 50 to 60 knot low-level jet is not a marginal feature. It is a significant, powerful moisture transport mechanism that is going to push Gulf of Mexico air that is currently carrying dew point values in the upper 60s across the coastal regions, deep into the interior of the country. Surface dew points are forecast to reach the upper 60s to around 70 degrees Fahrenheit across portions of northeast Texas, central and eastern Oklahoma, and into southern Kansas ahead of the surface low by the afternoon hours of the peak event day. 70-degree dew points in April in the southern plains. Let me put that in context for you because that number is not normal. The average dew point for this region in mid-April is in the mid to upper 50s. 70-degree dew points are what the Gulf Coast sees in late July. When air that moist sits at the surface in an environment with mid-level lapse rates as steep as what this trough is generating, the CAPE values, the convective available potential energy, the thermodynamic fuel for thunderstorms, go into a range that you do not see very often in mid-April. Multiple model solutions are generating KP values of 3,000 to 4,000 joules per kilogram in the highest overlap zone, 3,000 to 4,000 joules per kilogram. That is the same CAPE range the SPC was working with when they issued that Day 2 high risk for March 2025. That is the same CAPE range that was present across Louisiana and Arkansas in the afternoon hours of April 27, 2011. I'm not making that comparison to dramatize this forecast. I'm making it because it is scientifically accurate, and you deserve to have accurate information. Now layer on top of the instability the wind shear environment, because the wind shear is what separates this setup from just being a strong thunderstorm situation and pushes it firmly into violent rotating supercell territory. The directional shear in the lowest levels of the atmosphere, the backing of winds from southerly at the surface to southwesterly at 2,000 feet to southwesterly at 5,000 feet, is generating storm relative helicity values in the 350 to 500 meters squared per second squared range across the primary threat corridor. I have said it in every major forecast I have done this season, and I will say it again here because it genuinely matters. Anything above 150 meters, squared per second squared, is favorable for supercell tornadoes. Anything above 300 is significant. We are forecast to see 350 to 500. When you combine that helicity with the 3 to 4,000 joules per kilogram of CAPE and the 0 to 6 kilometer deep layer shear running at 50 to 65 knots across the same area, the significant tornado parameter, the composite metric the SPC uses to identify the environments most favorable for violent, significant tornadoes, is going to run between 5 and 9 across the highest risk corridor, 5 to 9 on that parameter. During the March 2025 outbreak, the STP values in the primary outbreak zones were running at 4 to 8. I want that comparison to land with its full weight because it should. Let me talk about the geographic corridor that I am most focused on, because this information only saves lives when it reaches people in specific places before the storms do. Based on the current model consensus and the surface analysis I've been examining this morning, the primary corridor of maximum severe weather potential runs from north-central Texas, the Wichita Falls, Gainesville, Sherman area, northeastward through central and eastern Oklahoma, across southeastern Kansas, and into southwestern Missouri and northwestern Arkansas. Within that corridor, the area I am watching with the most attention for the possibility of violent long-track tornadoes is the triangle formed roughly by Oklahoma City on the west, Tulsa on the north, and Fort Smith on the east. That triangle encompasses some of the most tornado-vulnerable terrain in the world. Gently rolling, largely unobstructed land that gives long-track tornadoes nothing to slow them down and nothing to break their circulations, communities that are closely spaced, and a population that has experienced enough tornado events over the decades to sometimes develop a false sense of what survival looks like. Do not let familiarity become complacency this week. The storms this environment produces are not going to look like the everyday severe weather that rolls through the southern plains on a marginally active afternoon. They are going to look like what you get when the atmosphere is running at full capacity in every single ingredient simultaneously. I also have to speak directly about the overnight and early morning component of this event, because the timing of the squall line consolidation in most model solutions is deeply concerning to me. The discrete supercell phase of this event, and the organized, rotating, violent individual storms capable of producing long-track tornadoes, is forecast to initiate sometime in the mid-afternoon hours, likely between 2 and 4 in the afternoon local time, across the Oklahoma-Texas boundary region. Those storms will move rapidly northeastward through the evening hours, reaching the Arkansas River Valley, and then the Ozark Plateau of northern Arkansas and southern Missouri during the late evening, somewhere in the 9 to 11 at night window for the most intense embedded supercells. And then the squall line, the organized linear storm system that consolidates out of the earlier supercell activity, is forecast to push through western and central Tennessee, western Kentucky, and southern Illinois somewhere in the window between midnight and 4 in the morning, midnight to 4 in the morning. I need every single person who lives in those areas to have a very specific plan for that window. Not a general awareness that storms are possible, a plan. Where you are going when the warning goes off. How long it takes to get there. What you're doing to make sure you are awake and moving when the warning covers your GPS location. Because the one thing that kills people in overnight tornado events more reliably than anything else in the world is not being awake to respond to them. Y'all Call is the direct answer to that specific problem, and I want to spend a moment talking about it because I think it is more relevant to this particular setup than it has been to almost any other event I have covered this season. When a tornado warning polygon is issued by the National Weather Service, and that polygon covers your exact GPS location, Y'all Call calls your phone. Not sends you a notification, not pushes an alert to your lock screen that your Do Not Disturb setting might suppress. Calls your phone, rings it persistently the way a phone call rings. The kind of ring that cuts through deep sleep, cuts through Do Not Disturb, cuts through the white noise of a ceiling fan and the closed windows of a brick house at 2 in the morning. Because that is the exact scenario that is going to be playing out in western Tennessee and southern Illinois and western Kentucky in the overnight hours of this event. Warnings are going to be issued. They are going to be accurate, and the people who are asleep in those communities need to be woken up in time to take shelter, not in time to watch the storm arrive. Y'all Call is $14.95 for a full year of protection for your exact location, and the link is right there in the description of this video. Please set it up before you go to sleep tonight. I'm completely serious about the timing of that request. This is not a tomorrow morning task. It is a today task, because the overnight window for this event is closer than you probably realize. The hail threat from this setup is going to be significant enough that I want to give it dedicated time, because it is going to be the severe weather hazard that damages the most total property of anything associated with this system, including the tornado threat. When KP values are running at 3 to 4,000 joules per kilogram and upper level temperatures inside the storms are in the negative 45 to negative 50 degree range. The hail growth environment inside the strongest supercell updrafts is extraordinary. Hailstones form by cycling through a thunderstorm updraft repeatedly, accumulating layers of ice with each pass, and the stronger the updraft and the colder the upper levels of the storm, the larger the stone can grow before the updraft can no longer support its weight. In the strongest supercells associated with this event, I think baseball-sized hail, 2 3/4 inches, is likely in the cores of the most intense storms. And in the absolute peak updrafts, there is a genuine possibility of softball-sized hail at 4 inches. I want to be clear about what those hail sizes mean practically, because I think people underestimate hail damage until they have experienced it personally. Baseball-sized hail shatters windshields. It dents and punctures vehicle hoods and roofs beyond repair. It destroys HVAC systems on the exterior of homes. It strips roofing materials off in sheets and can leave homes completely open to the flooding that follows. It is painful and potentially life-threatening to anyone caught outdoors when it falls, because it falls at terminal velocities of 50 to 60 miles per hour. If a severe thunderstorm warning is issued for your area during this event, please treat it exactly the same way you would treat a tornado warning, in terms of getting inside immediately and staying away from windows. The flash flooding component of this setup also deserves your full attention, and it is the hazard that is going to have the broadest geographic footprint and the longest lasting impact on communities across the affected region. The precipitable water values, the total moisture content of the atmospheric column, are running 20 to 30% above the mid-April average across the entire corridor ahead of this system. And when that exceptional moisture interacts with the training thunderstorm pattern that is going to develop as the squall line matures and slower moving cells loop back over the same geographic areas. Repeatedly, the rainfall rates in some locations are going to be extraordinary. The areas I am most concerned about for catastrophic flash flooding are the Arkansas River drainage basin through eastern Oklahoma and into Arkansas, the Ozark Plateau river systems of northern Arkansas and southern Missouri, and the creek and stream networks of the Tennessee River Valley in western Tennessee and northern Alabama. In the most aggressive training scenarios across those areas, 6-hour rainfall totals of 3 to 5 inches are within the range of possibility. 3 to 5 inches in 6 hours on terrain that is already moist from previous precipitation events. This spring produces flash flooding that gives people very little time between the first sign of rising water and the point where roads become impassable and low-lying areas become trapped. Please watch the water this week. Watch it constantly. And if you see any road with water crossing it, any amount of water, any depth, turn around. No exception, no estimation, no, it looks shallow enough. Turn around every single time. Y'all, I want to close this forecast the way I think it deserves to be closed, which is with complete honesty about where we are in this severe weather season and what this event represents within that larger context. Spring 2026 has already shown it intends to be the most atmospherically active spring since 2011. The March 2025 outbreak, the one that sat at the top of my mind as I wrote every word of this forecast this morning, the one that represents the last time we saw ingredients this complete assembled in one place, was the deadliest and costliest tornado outbreak in modern record for the month of March. It produced 43 deaths, $11 billion in damage, 118 tornadoes, and the atmosphere right now, in mid-April of 2026, is building a setup whose ingredient profile rivals that event. That is not a casual comparison. It is the most honest thing I know how to tell you, and it comes with the full weight of my responsibility to give you information that allows you to make real decisions for your real family before real severe weather arrives. So here is what I need you to do. Share this video right now, before you finish watching it, with everyone you know in Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Arkansas, Missouri, and Tennessee. Set up y'all call today, not tonight, today. Walk to your shelter and make sure you can get there in 30 seconds in the dark. Charge every device in your household and get a backup battery if you do not have one. And make a specific plan for the overnight hours of this event, because that is when the danger is highest and awareness is lowest. And the difference between a shelter and a living room is the difference between a story you tell your grandchildren and a statistic in a report. I am going live the moment the first supercells initiate, and I'm not signing off until this entire event is finished and every warning is lifted. Subscribe to this channel, hit the bell, and I will see y'all on the live stream. Stay safe out there. I love every single one of you.